Hello, Dr. Mike here for Topic 3 for CIS-2808 Digital Forensics course. Topic 3 is on the collection and verification of evidence and reporting. So there is some overlap with Topic 2, and so be forewarned, but I will not try to spend too much time on them, those specific items. But if there is overlap, it's because of their importance. So in any case, we're looking at the Department of Justice PDF, chapters 4 and 5. Chapter 4 is on evidence examination, and I'm not going to read the chapter to you, but there's some good points here. After physical extraction, after extraction of the data, keyword searches is definitely one thing to look at. File carving is a huge thing. File carving, and we're going to look at this later, is actually we actually have a lab or labs on this. You carve out files by their type. There's Scalpel and Foremost, for example, as open source tools you'll be using. And these, of course, could be deleted files too. These are just files identified on disk. So these are at disk level, not at really the operating system level. But you can use operating systems on the evidence drive to look for keywords. The OS has built-in, a lot of modern operating systems have built-in indexing services and search services. So there's steps here about extraction, time frame analysis, which is really good to look at, reviewing when certain files were accessed, opened, accessed, or changed and closed, when certain emails were sent and or received. So you'll know some tools will have a time frame analysis, and this is really important because there's a lot of data sometimes, and be able to see it in the context of time will help establish if is it evidence, is it not evidence. If it is, where does it fall into the evidence chain? So again, metadata is a huge deal. So data high analysis, we're looking for encrypted, password protected files, and there's actually a lab on cracking those files. There is a section here about host protected areas. I talked to one of the lead investigators at the FBI lab, digital forensics lab in Cincinnati. And though this is something you could check for, there are checks for this. He said nearly has it been any or ever been used. So not really a big deal. Stenography, I think there was actually something in previous news articles where there was actually stenography used in hiding messages. These last 2 points here, probably something that's not really big. I would guess encryption is the biggest one. Encryption of encrypted zip files, password protected files, and of course encrypted partitions, and of course entire operating systems themselves being password protected. So again, there are many programs you can use to help identify files and review the names and relevance of patterns, file contents, and so on. And you will learn these in the course. So chapter 4, again, these are real short chapters. I do like this. And then we get into document reporting. So we'll come back to that in a second. But there is a tab here on common tasks. This is part of the shell. And it's a nice little, just a boilerplate or a boiled down version of some of the common things you look at, which of course we know from high level, which your main objective is to identify, preserve, analyze, and present evidence. So we know that's high level. This evidence can be physical hardware, removal, storage, documents. So again, those could be physical documents, post-it notes with passwords on them, things like that. And again, search and seizure permissions, carefully identify everything, what's plugged into what, the condition of everything. Things might have fingerprints on them, so even though you might be handling, you could be handling directly the suspect's system. So that means you might need to then not transfer your DNA, your fingerprints to those. So again, gloves is one example of one way to do that. Removable storage, again, sticky notes, scraps of paper, handwritten notes, whiteboards, things like that. This physical evidence could help you get into those protected documents again. Again, how evidence is collected. It must be admissible. So how is stuff is documented, changed, bagged and tagged, and so on. So we'll come back to that in a second here. Let's go look at the slide deck. don't want to get too ahead of myself. So again, what is computer evidence? What are your objectives? I just talked about it already, so we'll move on. And really look at the who, what, when, where, why, right? This is the basics of any evidence collection. This is, again, going to help you maybe figure out what to look for. Again, there's that low-hanging fruit or that quick search. If it's a case where we're looking for code, Python code, C++ code, things like that, JavaScript. Maybe someone's producing malware, and that's their workstation. So we know what type of files to look for. Maybe it's a child pornography case, images, videos. So by file types are going to help identify what you need. So types of evidence. Now we've been talking about digital, but there actually is different types or categories of evidence. Real evidence, documentary evidence, testimonial evidence, and demonstrative evidence. So we'll talk about those in a second here. Real evidence themselves. This is what we know about. It's our fingerprints, DNA, handwritten notes. Again, most of the time, this real evidence is going to be handled by the different part of forensics, the crime scene forensics team, or the crime scene forensics, CSI. But yet, some of these things might have some implications for the digital side. Handwritten notes, for example, passwords on them. So always keep that in mind. You might not be exposed to the real evidence. You could be only given, you could be given the laptop. You pump down in front of you. This was taken from the scene. You go through the process of hashing it and figure out that it's password protected. Ask about those. Ask about the real evidence that was collected. Possibly there could be a photograph of a post-it note or a whiteboard that has that password. So documenting your evidence. So these are like reports or log files. They have to be authenticated. So they cannot stand on their own without being authenticated. Now what we have is called the best evidence rule. This is very important. So for example, you get a copy of the email logs from the ISP or from the email, maybe Google, for example, or Microsoft, from a proper subpoena. Now, again, the big thing about evidence is it has not been tampered with. Well, this is a copy of the logs. So how can we ensure that it's true, it has not been tampered or altered? And there's ways to do that, and documentary evidence is what this becomes. And the best evidence rule really states that we can't actually take the email server from Google. We can't take it and haul it in and bag it and tag it. All we can get is a certified copy from them. And that could include hashing as part of that. It could include a sort of a bagging and tagging concept, even on a virtual level, showing that this is a certified copy of that server log. So you can see we're normally like a murder weapon. You can't have a copy of a murder weapon. You need the original murder weapon with the evidence on it, fingerprints, blood stains, and so on. That's been, again, properly handled. But again, with digital, we have this strange dichotomy here. We can't get that. So best evidence rule is something you should be aware of. It has to be authenticated. Testimonial evidence. Again, this is witness testimony, but also could be testimony from yourself or someone on your team. You may be deposed to give testimony as an expert witness, showing either both the validity of the evidence and how the evidence was taken. So it could be very demonstrative in this case. So this could be part of that. Now, demonstrative could mean it helps explain the evidence. It might not actually. It could be a visual aid that someone else might use. Maybe in a to a jury or to a judge or something like that. So someone could use your visual aids, or you could be using your own visual aids as part of that. So demonstrative evidence is part of that. Here's an example. You might want to talk about how does an email work. You might be dealing with the jury, and you got to really boil some very technical stuff down to really drive it home. So I would probably guess there's probably going to be examples of this. If you're new to a team, forensics team that has done this, there's probably examples of best demonstrative evidence to use. So you can definitely use it, especially if it's something general like how does email work, how does hashing work, what is a hash, and things like that. So a lot of times you might need to have to invent the wheel here. It's already been done. You should be able to leverage the existing demonstrative artifacts for your work. Again, search and seizure, very important aspect. Talked about it. I'm sure I've talked about it previous ones. Is it subpoenaed? Is it a search warrant? Is it voluntary? If it's a search warrant, what's in the scope of the search warrant? Very important. So, chain of custody. This is a very important thing. Collection, transportation, analysis, and storage. Anything that's been taken or moved, we need to make sure we have chain of custody. And this is where the DOJ Chapter 5 document and reporting comes in. There's actually a really great, there's templates in the back on the appendix here. So Appendix A, we actually have case examples, and in Appendix B, we'll actually have, and C, I'm sorry, Appendix C has some simple worksheets. So here we go. Evidence worksheets, hard drive evidence worksheets, movable reader worksheets, and so on. And this chain of custody I think is probably one of those inside there. And of course, document evidence forms themselves are very important. So, come back to case examples in a second. So, again, this chapter on document reporting, maintain a copy of chain of custody, very, very important. So, you can imagine anytime anything goes wrong here, you could lose admissibility. So think like a defense attorney. So again, and then it's not always to show that evidence could be used to show someone as not guilty. So we always think it's trying to find the person guilty, but it could find them not guilty. So really, maintaining the integrity of the evidence is very, very important. So take pictures of real evidence in the original state. We talked about this before. This goes with documenting the scene. All your procedures used during the collection process. And it also stays pristine and unaltered. It's very important. And part of this too is this order of volatility. And we'll come in a second, but we're going to go back and forth between chain of custody, collection, and looking at order of volatility as well as power. Yes, is the system on or off? And it's part of your documenting the scene itself. So we'll look at order of volatility here. We're going to talk about that as we walk through this. Chain of custody, you can see here, this is a good example. A hard drive was seized, there's a document for it. What tool was used to make a copy of the drive, so a copy of document about the tool itself. Again, this is a copy of the maintenance of the tool, the serial number, when it was last verified, if it's a software tool, hardware tool, and of course the hard drive. We document that process of making a copy of it. Again, hopefully this is we talked about before, it is the tool used to copy it has no write back, so we know there's no changes to the original hard drive. And of course we can make multiple copies of that, and they can be verified with hashing. Again, right here, so we verify its original and the copy. There's a document for that. Again, we keep a log file, and this log file can come from your tool suite. A lot of tool suites will create this hash of the original, hash of the copy. You might do it manually, but we want to make sure we have it documented. And of course, the forensic tool used, what tool do we use, what version of the tool was used, if it's licensed, is it properly licensed? You don't want anything to make that evidence inadmissible. Then we have our copy, and we document the process, and we create a report. So we'll talk about reports here in a little bit. Again, chain of custody is an evidence log. And this is a quick example. Date and time, the action type, the person, evidence, description information, the handling procedure, and the complete description of the action being done with the evidence. Of course, when it's checked in, checked out, and there could be multiple copies. You could have a check-in, check-out log for the removal or the induction or removal of evidence, and the authority being that could be the officer in charge of the evidence locker per se. And then of course then the chain of custody document goes with the evidence, also showing it was checked out, signed by that person. So you have cross auditing, a signature that was checked out by this person from the officer, and a signature of that officer showing that they have this specific piece of evidence, and then what they're going to do to it. So there could be more than one evidence log here. And the idea is these logs can be cross-checked to show that there's been a maintained chain of custody. And this is one example here. Date and times, Seizure hard drive, and so on. So again, it doesn't have to be too in-depth, but this is a quick example of a chain of custody log. Again, admissibility is very important. We got to make sure everything meets regulatory standards. It has been obtained and handled. So again, know the rules. Yeah, there's a lot of slides on this. I talk about this a lot. It is a very important aspect of the forensics process, is this protection and of the integrity. Treat each incident as a criminal act. I'm not sure what that means there. I guess I would say be cautious. If you think it's evidence, then treat it as such. It could be a worse thing is, well, that's not evidence. It's just a slip of paper, and so it falls out of the chain of custody and it does end up being an important part of evidence. Well, then that's inadmissible. So leave no trace, very important. I did graphics on this before. Again, read-only image. What that means, again, is we're going to get a copy of, and this is where the volatility comes into place. We use a hardware blocker. Probably the best is hardware write blocker, but there are software write blockers. But we got to make sure we don't actually change the original evidence. Now, what does that mean with or volatility? What does that mean itself? So let's talk about documenting the scene and leaving no trace. So what we have is, when you document the scene, again, everything is documented. Photographs, videos, detailed notes. It could be pictures and tags of what's plugged into what. I mean exactly what cable is plugged into what part of the laptop or desktop, where that cable go to. So this is very important, and it can be very tedious, but it is very important to have this. So, important aspect is what we do when evidence is on. So we don't know the state of the evidence. That's part of the documentation of the state, right? All right, so come back to here. So if it is on and we have access to it, we can use third-party ways to capture volatile memory. So RAM is going to be probably the main one. RAM, and then we have what we call either swap space. If not swap space, it's also the Windows name for it, I forgot. But I always think of the Linux term. Is our temp disk, our virtual disk. So virtual memory in the sense of OS. So a lot of volatility. We talk about CPU register count, CPU registers. They're always maybe to collect the information from there. I think RAM is going to be your main one. You want to collect a copy of RAM. You want a snapshot of swap. Now swap could be written to disk. It might not be. This swap normally is a drive, part of the drive. But we want to look at temp space. These could be cleaned out during shutdown. And then of course we have our hard drives, which are of course a lot more. This is not the volatility. Then you can see the volatility sort of goes down. And, as we shut the computer, we lose this, we lose this. Temp might be there, swap might be there, so we get more iffy here. Hard drive, of course, should be there. And also then we move out of that, move into a remote system. So our network. Network attached devices. So network attached hard disks, cloud. So where are these connected to? And if it is part of the scope of the search warrant, then we can also go ahead and collect that. Archive media, and so on. So backup devices connected to the device. Of course, it should all be documented, but we want to have those too. We get those later after the system is shut down if it was on. So you can see the volatility here at the top of the list is going to be most volatile, RAM being that the most. As we go down this, we get least volatile. of our system. Again, fingerprints, just be aware of that. There are several things these fingerprints could be on. We don't want to introduce our own fingerprints to the scene. Removable storage, talked about it already. Flash drives, again, these should all be documented, what's plugged into what. Most operating systems have a log of when something was attached or unattached, like Windows registry, for example, will know when what was attached to what. And part of this documenting the scene too, which not only our volatility, but we're going to document the network while the system's running, if it's on. All right, I'll double it ready. Okay, here we go. So what do we do about power? So first off, if it's a mobile device, a phone, a tablet, a laptop that is run off battery, again, you want to document its current state, and you want to keep, you don't want the battery to drain out. If all possible, collect any power cords for that device that it was plugged into. So part of the collection process is not just the mobile device, but anything that's plugged into or any plug for it. You don't have anything there, the device is just left out in the open. You should have part of your lab setup will have ways to keep these devices powered on if they were on. If you if the device battery runs out, that could be an issue. So it might not be an issue with admissibility. It could be though. That's the thing. We introduced some variables here. Now here's the question: did we pull the plug on a live system or not? Let's talk about desktop. So there's a lot of ifs here. If it's up and running and logged in, definitely can image a system. You can collect this volatile information here. And then if you pull the plug, it's going to freeze the system. If you shut it down and it has encryption, it might re-encrypt that hard drive. So there are times when we want to sort of gather the system, gather evidence from the running system, RAM, swap, temp space, and then maybe pull the plug, especially if it is an encrypted system. So that's always been a challenge. Evidence in RAM, live collection, and of course, look at my notes here. Dealing with power. So again, we talked about live forensics already. That's probably more common with mobile devices, because really our mobile devices are always live. If you think about it, they really are live all the time. If possible, always want the initial state. Again, RAM collection, swap collection is off a live system. These are volatile areas. Our hard drive, though, when the system is shut down, or if the power is pulled, or the power is already off, then again, we want that write blocker. We want to hash that. So again, I know I've done this before. Let's talk about our evidence drive. This could be everything from a pulled hard drive, in the system itself. This is our original evidence drive. Could be a movable drive. Could be, a thumb drive, for example, SD card. But in any case, we want some sort of write blocker. So again, this is going to here. We get no write back. And read only. So we read only. We make our copy. Now again, part of this process is to compute a hash. So hashing is very important. A hash is a part of encryption. Hash will produce a signature, and there are various types of hashes we use. MD5 and the SHA series, SHA1, HHA 128 to 256, and 512. So the idea is you don't want to get something, you actually will probably produce multiple hashes. It's very possible you might even do MD5 and an SHA1. We might do an SHA226 and so on. These hashes are very in length. The idea being these longer hashes, a 256-bit SHA hash is going to have real less of a chance of something called collision. Now, collision is really, really rare, but it means I have two documents that are actually different, but will hash the same. This is really rare, and I'm not going to get into the depths of hash collisions, but multiple hashing is going to help ensure for admissibility that we know for sure that this copy of this drive hashes match this one, because all the hashes from the original drive match whatever the 2 or 3 hashes we take, maybe an MD5 and SHA-1. So those are types of hashes. And we're going to come back to hashing later in the course, definitely. So I'm just going to give you a preview of it now. SHA-1 is an MD5 are probably the two common ones. It'll take longer to compute 256 and 512, and you're doing a full drive hash. These might take too long, so you might just get MD5 and SHA-1 for a full disk hash. But there you go. There, SHA-1 and MD5. And what we'll do is we create a bit-by-bit copy. So we're not doing a file copy. We're not doing any kind of like system copy, like click copy paste. We want actually a bit-by-bit copy. And you'll see there's some like DD and LCFDD. We'll look at a couple of tools. DD is an open source tool, fantastic tool. Where it does that bit-by-bit copy, so we get an exact copy. And that's what the hashing does. The hashing will verify that. So the hash verifies it, the DD makes the copy. So you can imagine you calculate the hashes first, make the DD copy, and calculate the hashes again, and then compare them. I mean, we return this back to the events locker. And then we use this to make further copies. You make another copy, you hash it again. And so every time you make a copy, we want copy 2, and you might make multiple copies, so you can split the work up. Again, we got to have a hash of that. We got to verify it matched the original hashing. So, and everything's documented. Now we look at evidence analysis itself. We're going to look at this deeper in the course, but there are various ways to look at this. Again, where to look is very important. What to look for, also very important. And this is going to depend upon the case, nature of the case. But example is an extension checker. So someone says, well, I want to hide these 2 or 3 Word documents that may have something in them. I'm going to rename the extension to .jpeg. And so when you try to open it, it just says, it says corrupted file. Well, we'll see in the course. There's the first 4 to 6 bits on the file header. It's hexadecimal, and it's actually a file signature. Determines what the file is. So even if you change the extension, you can't change those bits. So there's extension checkers for that. Of course, we look for deleted files, log files, and so on. Again, preserve your evidence. Again, you can work all you want in the copies. That's fine. You go in, you look for file carving, look for certain extension checkers, look at home directories. Because we're doing that within the copy, it's fine. You have a lot of output though, so organizations will be very important. And again, know your audience. If it's going to be used, you might need to actually start thinking about preparing your documentary and evidence. I'm sorry, your sort of your presentation. So your evidence about how you collected it. So you might need to start thinking about that even when you're taking notes. So talk about reporting. So, again, your notes are very important. Detailed notes here. I'm not going to go and read this chapter to you, but chapter 5 talk about documenting. And in your report. Now, a report could come with several things. You could actually get report output from these different tools. A lot of them we'll see, have reporting outputs. That could be an appendix to a summary report you create. Or you might have a template you use. And some of your findings, again, so there's some good here. Specific files that were requested related to the request, other files that you maybe found that might support what was originally found, string searches, keywords. So you might have a summary of your detailed findings, in graphic images and so on. Supporting materials, you might have a glossary, and Appendix A, case example. So Appendix A is great. This is, again, it's a DOJ document. And you could find some great examples here of some templates to use. So one of the tasks in this class is you're going to create your own report template. Chances are if you actually do end up at a full forensics lab somewhere, they probably already have one or more templates that are used for certain cases or certain types of documenting certain types of evidence for certain types of cases. So you definitely want to use any templates that are provided because it's going to make things consistent. So if another examiner comes in where you're gone, they can take over and they know where to look. For the example of this class, though, part of this task is you're going to create your own template. So part of the topic here is, of course, we're going to create your own template. And I point you to this here, and you look at Appendix A, and you can see some examples here. Go through these. It's case brief 2. Use these case briefs, and you'll find examples of some templates. So here we go. So case brief report. So here's an example of template: a memo, a date, time, the requester, the offense, the case number, and so on. Again, there's no hard rule what you need inside here. I definitely would look for some sort of executive type summary at the top. Before we go into every bit about the disk itself, this is a timeline report here. This is pretty impressive. This is maybe a timeline report. Actions taken, what time. Here we go. You see everything this person did. So now I might put that into an appendix. I might want to have the evidence up front in more of a summary. So, but again, maybe you have it in this order. I'm not saying there's no wrong way to do it, but presentation is very important too. Use of headings, bullets, numbering, page numbers. If you have figures, always put figure number. Like, you just don't put the image above. You can see the image of the suspect's car in image 1, and you refer to the image 1 in the text. So table 1, image 1, so on. Again, just good old heading 1, heading 2, titles, readability, things like that. Should be professional looking and easy to read. So there's a couple examples here you can go through and create a report template which you will later use in this class. So again, I think we wrapped up here on the common tasks with collection, verification, and reporting. Let's look at the last year. Yeah, so again, know your audience, organize your presentation, keep it simple. Again, you might need to make a presentation to go along with the report. Simplicities are very important if you have to present evidence. Again, you have to think about you're going to present to a jury that doesn't have the technical expertise you do. So the ability to explain technical things down, boil them down to where I hate to use the term layman, but any layman can understand it is a very good skill set. And having a detailed notes and having a good report will help you go back and do that, because you might need to make this presentation a year after this was done. So that's something to consider. You might not be creating those the presentations themselves, right away. So, and this is done a year after you've already done like 100 cases. So you have to figure, what case was that? What I do? I don't know what this is about. Your notes and the report templates can help you go back and recreate what you might need for presentations. So, anyways, that wraps up topic 3. Please refer to the DOJ and look through anything I didn't cover document for this week, for this topic. Thank you.